Welcome to Kingdom Conversations, and I am so excited we have a program for you. This is the one where you have to go and share, you have to tell somebody, listen, pick up the phone right now and tell somebody we're on. Okay, you know what you need to do. If you're watching us from YouTube, I want you to subscribe. Go ahead, subscribe. And then I want you to tell us where you're from, okay? So do that for me right now. And if you're watching us from Facebook, I need you to follow us, okay? So follow us right now. And then afterwards, I want you to have what you call a watch party. That means share this program with everyone. It's going to be a great program. We're going to talk about slavery today. And, you know, with all what's going on and what we've seen happen over the past couple of months, I think it's time that we Black folks have a conversation. And today, I have one of my spiritual sons with me, Pastor Joseph Opere. He has been doing some incredible teaching. And so good to have you on Kingdom Conversations, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me today, sir.
So let's just tell everyone a little bit about you, because some people don't know. You are a pastor. Name of your church?
The name of my church is Warrior House International.
Yeah, and you're originally from Ghana, right?
That's right. I was born in the Ashanti region in Ghana, in a mining town called Konongo.
Okay, that's where all the gold is, right?
That's right. Yeah, there's
and where the Ashanti king is.
Yes.
So one of the things that I'm intrigued about, I because you're under my covering, I try and check on what my leaders are doing from time to time, and I happened to go on your page, and I was listening to a very well presented conversation. You called it, if I remember, 1619, beyond 1619.
Yeah.
And it was very much about slavery. So I want to ask you a couple of questions about this, because, and I think we're probably going to go on for more than one show, because I've only got about 28 minutes. So we're going to try our best. But one of the things you started off by saying, there's a lot of conversations whether we should be called Africans or we should not be called Africans. Some people call us Egyptians. And another thing, the Moors. And then others are saying we really should go back to Islam. Tell me a little bit about that.
Wow, there's a whole lot of stuff going on there. We've got a lot of young people who are trying to find out their identity.
Yes.
And which is quite difficult, and I feel for them. Especially those of Afro-Caribbean descent and Afro-American descent, because through this whole problem of slavery, a lot of people have tried to trace their names, and try to trace their lineage, but they end up stopping at the slave master's name. Therefore, they're subject to anybody coming up and telling them that this is who you are, you're the Moors, you're the Egyptians, and I see young people wearing Egyptian ankh and all kinds of weird things because they're trying to find their identity.
Let me ask you a question. You just said about the Moors. Who are the Moors?
The Moors were the black Arabs that entered into Europe. They had a dynasty that spanned about 700 years. And they entered into Europe, they conquered Spain, and they actually brought with them a lot of different things like the guitar. They brought universities into Europe. They brought street lighting and pavements and water systems. And so the Moors contributed heavily to European society, and a lot of them were ruling in places like and other places. In fact, the place Gibraltar is named after one of the Moors, who was Tariq, who invaded Spain and conquered the Visigoths. And so at that mountain, when he consolidated his army, they actually named Gibraltar after him.
Oh, interesting. So let's get back. So there seemed to be, and I'm sure, you know, a lot of pastors out there have been dealing with this. I've seen a lot of young people that was in my church who's moved over to these group called the Israelites or the 12 tribes, etc. I remember one day I was literally, seriously, in Brixton, and all these group of guys was, you know, crowded, and I thought, wow, this looks interesting. So I walked up, and then one of the guys recognized, goes, "Hey, Bishop Francis, I used to be a member of your church. I've now found the truth." So I was, okay, all right. And he started to have an engaged conversation with me. And some of the things he was saying, which are historical, I was agreeing with him, and he was pretty shocked because he thought I was going to say no. And then he started to say, wait a minute, all the time I've come to Iraq, I've never heard you say none of these things. So I said, well, I've spoke about things in between, you know, there's a lot to say when you're a preacher. And he was quite surprised because he thought I was going to be on the attack.
Wow.
The only problem with what he was saying is distorted, as most of these organizations, and it's built around a lot of anger, which is kind of, if I'll be honest, understandable until you get it. It depends who's teaching you, and it depends who's communicating it to you. And one of the things I like about what you were saying, you were just trying to bring truth, and there's a massive problem with our Black guys when it comes to identity, and especially now with the George Floyd situation when he got killed. Now there's this interest now about our history. What do you think about that?
I think it's important that we tackle that. Like you said, you know, you've got the 12 tribes, and you've got people who calling themselves Hebrew Israelites.
Yes.
And agree with a lot of what they're saying. What I don't agree with is the anger, the hatred, the resentment, and, you know, but I understand.
Yes.
But yes, I just think it's time that we found our identity and know who we are, but without all the confusion.
You were talking in the conversation, and I'm sure a lot of people has heard this word Negroes or this terminology, and they don't actually know where that come from. And you were basically saying where the word Negro came from. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, the word Negro is very interesting. When you actually just do a study on the word Negro, you can just type it up in the internet, do a Google search, and when it comes up, when you look at the bottom, it says Portugal and Spain. So we understand that this is a word from that region. And so when you go and do a further search, you find out that it was used probably just after the 13th century. But then when you go and look at other historical books, in particular, there's one called The History of the Jews from the Destruction of Jerusalem until the Present Time. And in that book, it talks about Jews living in Portugal who, if someone calls them a Jew, that person can actually stab them. So a law came out that where they could stab them. But when you look in other books, and there are several historical books, over 150, 200, 300 years old, and all these books give references and say that the Jews of Spain and Portugal are dark, they are swarthy. It uses that language. So we can establish that the Black Jews that were living in Portugal and Spain, the word Jew became like a cuss word. So in order to stop people from using that word, they were given powers to be able to enact justice themselves. However, people had to call them something. So they started to call them Negroes instead of Jews.
Right.
And if you look at the evidence, because we know Portugal was some of the first people slaving the world.
Yeah.
If you look at a map, there's a map, if you do a Google search, 1747 map of Guinea. And if you look for that map, you'll see when you enlarge it, region that's named by the Europeans at that time, and this map is drawn by a royal cartographer in England,
wow.
But the whole region is called Negroland, the whole region.
Okay.
When you look at road, and unfortunately we've had derogatory words that come from that word. So we've had the word nigger, but we don't know where that word nigger comes from. But that word is coming from the fact that there's a river that goes I think they call it Oxbow River. It goes all the way up through that land of Guinea and comes out at a place called the Niger Delta.
Right.
And that river, back in Old English, they call that the Nigger River. They didn't call it the Niger River or the Niger River, which Niger would be French and Niger will be the modern English rendition, but Old English, they just call it the Nigger River. And so people that came from that region, they started to call them Negroes and Niggers.
Wow.
Now, when you enlarge that map on the West Coast, right next to Ghana, which Ghana used to be called the Gold Coast. So if you're looking for modern Ghana today, you won't find it on that map. What you'll find is the Gold Coast. But right next to it in a place which I believe would be Togo, and we've got to also understand that the Europeans partitioned this land in their country. So when they're drawing a map, these people are not separate peoples. They're all the same peoples, but they've gone in and just carved the map up. But when you look at where Togo is today, you see on that map, it says Kingdom of Judah or Kingdom of Ouida, which is quite interesting. So it shows us that the Portuguese, who I believe named a lot of these places, because Lagos is actually a place in Portugal, and it's a place in Nigeria. So we can tell that, and you've got Portuguese words, even in Ghana, where I come from. If you go to Cape Coast, the Fanti, their language, it has these words in it. So we know the Portuguese were there. They even have their own slave castle there, which they call El Nido.
I went to that place, and Lord have mercy, I don't even talk about that. But that's where I learned a whole lot about what the Portuguese did to our ancestors. It's so funny because every year, me and my family would go to Portugal. Just, you know, we found this wonderful spot. Well, after I went to the slave castle, I said, I ain't going back there no. No more. I was so upset. I was so upset. Yeah, but go and talk about more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, the Portuguese, they coined the word, along with the Spanish, the word Negro. And so if you look into history and you dig deeply enough, you'll find out that the Negroes were the Black Jews of Spain and Portugal. And that's what happens.
All right. You're going too far. You're going too far. We start talking about the Jews. We're going to get there.
Okay. Okay.
But let me ask you a couple of more questions, because this is very interesting, because we've heard these terminologies and didn't realize it derives from Portugal, Portuguese language and Spanish language. Now, what makes a lot of sense to me, and we're going to talk a little bit more other stuff, I'm jumping a little bit. Most of, I come from a Caribbean background in Jamaica. And when I went to Jamaica, what was surprising to me, there's a place called Spanish Town. And I'm like, what's Spanish Town? Then I get to realize that Jamaica was basically owned by the Spanish, if I'm right, or they were there and we were brought because of slavery to that island, if I'm right. And there's a lot of stuff that now kind of makes sense, that we didn't know where these names were birthed out, and we just take it for granted. And so what do you know about that?
Well, Jamaica was definitely under the Spanish and the Portuguese.
Yeah.
And according to history, the Spanish tried to obviously control the slave masses there, but they had a problem with a certain set of people who they called the Coromantians. And these people gave them problems, and they fled into the mountains.
Is that like the people that I've heard about? Is that like the Maroon people?
This is the Maroon people. So the Maroon people,
and that place actually still exists today. If you go to Jamaica, I'm told when you go there, it's like a little Africa. And these are people who have not changed their culture. Is that true?
That's true. A lot of their culture has not changed. And they have two places, I believe, in Jamaica. One's called Flagstaff, and the other one's Maroon Town.
Yes.
And when the British would try, sorry, not the British, the Spanish, first of all, would try to go up there and try to get them back as slaves, they would decimate them. They would cover themselves in bushes and come out of the bush and kill them. And then on top of that, they also had methods to communicate. So they had short horns, which they would blow when there was war to
let everybody know.
Yeah,
That's very biblical, isn't it?
it is very,
Very
very.
biblical. Whenever war is, you blow a sound, you shofar.
Yeah, this. And then on top of all this, the Spanish, they got fed up of fighting them. I believe their leaders were two people called Nani and Cujo, according to the accounts. And one was from Ghana, I believe Nani was from Ghana, and Cujo's from Sierra Leone. And they were the leaders of the Maroons at that time. But what I got to hear was the Spanish made a peace treaty with them. So they just basically left the Maroons alone and just controlled the other slaves. So anyone who went into Maroon Town or managed to get in immunity from slavery.
Amazing, amazing. So those of us who from Jamaican descent, let's go down to Maroon Town. Do you think they'll let us in? I understand that it's not very easy to even now to still go into their town.
If you're going, you have to book a tour. I've seen a tour of it, and yeah, it's very interesting because they show how the British and different ones still tried to come in and still tried to re-enslave them, and it wasn't working because they had to climb the waterfalls. And what they didn't realize is they weren't climbing the waterfalls with shoes; they were climbing them barefoot. So again, they couldn't get to them. But I believe if you check history, the British learned a lot of some of the guerrilla warfare from the and the Maroons. So all this stuff where when you see people in the old war movies putting on bushes and stuff to cover themselves,
right?
That would be accredited to people like the Maroons and the Apaches and different ones.
Oh, wow. So probably all of that uniform, the green uniform that they would wear, okay,
yes.
and try to blend into camouflage. Yes. Come on, so we black people been doing this. See, don't mess with us. We're fighters from time. Yeah, we know we got strategy about us. So there's so much I want to say, and as I said, we're gonna have to keep going. What made you, before we get really into the conversation, what made you start to kind of divulge and study about this whole history? Because, you know, one of the things, if I be honest with you, Joseph, I'm very jealous of my African brothers and sisters. And when I say I'm jealous, because you still have your heritage. You still have a lot of things that you can go to Ghana and literally connect with your people. I recently had to do testing just to find out who my lineage was. And I'm still working through some stuff as I was looking, trying to find out where my bloodline is. And I learned so much. Even I even got Arab in me. And I'm sure that will make sense to some of the things you're going to say. I can write to Morocco. I can see my people there. I went to the Arab people is in my bloodline. Then I looked and I saw Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau. Just so many different bloodlines that I am connected to. And then I was chasing and I saw even some Portuguese, which might be some kind of Angolan kind of thing in me. So all of this makes sense, right? And because they sent me this kind of map and I could see everywhere my bloodline is went, right to people who I've got families in, what's that place called? There's a place that everybody in Jamaica went, I can't remember, to work. I can't remember. And I could see all of this. And for me, it was a big excitement because when I turned 50, they asked me, what do I want for my birthday? And I said, I want to trace my heritage. But, you know, when you, sorry to say, you're talking and you say, yeah, I'm Joseph Pepe, I'm from Shantytown and like that. You know, I'm like, man. And, you know, I get angry with some of our African young guys and young girls. I'm like saying, listen, you should be excited. Yeah, you've been westernized and some of the culture stuff, but be happy about your culture. I says, I'm a messed up culture. I'm one, my forefathers was shipped over. You know, when I first went to Africa, I'm gonna say this, when I first went to Africa, I went Nigeria. I never forget this. I went to Guiding Light, and this was a guy named Pastor Wale Adefarison. Everybody knows Paul Adefarison, but he's his brother.
Oh,
He was the first person to take me to Nigeria. And I went, and also I took a lot of Nigerian young people who didn't want to go to Africa. I said, listen, we're all going. You all need to go. And when I went there, I'll never forget. And the first thing they was singing, that's the first time, and that's why I recorded it. They sang, Baba, Osheo Baba, Osheo Baba. And I'm telling you, right, I started to cry. I started to cry. I was crying like a baby. And when I looked around, everyone that was in the group was crying. And they were like, why were you crying? I says, I was crying because, first of all, when I go to Jamaica, right, they say, British boy, go where? Yeah? The moment I go there, they go, British. Mind you, they don't say that now because I'm known in Jamaica. I'm like their, you know, I'm like their flagship now. But before, when I go there, and they go, what's the British boy? And then they say, you know, we walk too fast and everything, because, you know, they walk slow out there and everything. And when I went to Jamaica, I felt that was kind of home, but not home, because I felt, and then I'm born here in the UK, and when they go, they get lost, you nigger, what you doing here? So again, but when I came to Africa, that was the one place I know, without any dispute, this is home. Nobody can't say it's home. But here's the thing that hit me real hard. When they were singing, I couldn't understand what they were singing, but I felt like my spirit knew it. That was the strangest thing. My spirit, and that's why I was crying like a baby, because it was like my spirit was comfortable, and my spirit was saying, I know what's going on here. This is where I belong. It was really weird. And not only I had that experience, but I remember speaking to Bishop Jackson, telling him the same thing, and he said exactly what he felt as a person. So for people like you, you know, you just, you know, and then you got to tell me that you come from the gold town, the shanty town, where, you know, because we all grew up hearing about shanty town. And I must admit, right, when I did my DNA and I found out I wasn't from Ghana, I was upset. I thought, oh no. And then I thought, but you know, and then when I start to look into my culture, I had acceptance.
Well, no, the reason why I got into the whole thing was because when I was pastoring in St. Martin, someone came up to me and they gave me a VHS cassette.
Right.
And was about the lost tribes. And even though I went to Bible school, I went to Bible school at Kensington Temple, but I didn't really get into the whole thing of the Northern Kingdom as heavily as I should have. So when I was watching this video on the lost tribes, it was about a group of people in Nepal who said that they were the children of Israel, one of the tribes of the children of Israel. They were called the Naga, and there were some other tribes in Nepal, and they had been fighting them, and they were saying that these people don't belong here. And so they were out there. So I was watching all this. It was very interesting, and there was this rabbi called Rabbi Abichai, and they were trying to verify that these indeed were the descendants of the children of Israel, to the point where they got them all the way back into Israel. So
these are black people, right?
No, these are Asian people.
These are Asian, okay.
Asian people. So and they look Asian.
Right.
So I was, wow, okay. And then they were showing people all the way in China, in their passport, it says Yuda. And I was like, wow, Chinese people too? So I said, okay, well, if they got this and there were 10 lost tribes, maybe we've got something to do with this. So I said, you know what? Let me just do a search and see if the Ashanti have anything, you know, connected to this. So then when I did a search, all this Rastafarian stuff started coming up. But then there was one book by a guy, and the book was called Hebrewisms of West Africa.
Yeah.
And in the book, I just read an excerpt from the book on a webpage, and I saw a picture of how the Ashanti used to dress. They still wear what's called the kente.
Yes.
They still wear that today, which when I look at that now, I won't go into that, but it looks very much like what the Romans were wearing back in the day, but I'll leave that one alone. And the guy's also wearing a turban, which turbans are not something really African. They're more, they are African, but from what we call today the Middle East, more so. So, and then he's also wearing this thing around his chest that looks like an ephod in the book. And the guy read portion of the book, and I managed years later to buy the book and start to read it. And it was talking about connections with the language, words like Nyami. And they're saying that linguistically it sounds like Yahweh. So these people, and also the customs. They spoke about if a woman is in her menstruation cycle, that in the Old Covenant, they will put them in a separate place. And the Ashanti do that. And then he was speaking about circumcision. The Ashanti do that. And then, so I just started to get curious. So I called my uncle. Because my uncle used to be the head of the People's Justice System in Ghana in the 80s.
Right.
So he's got a lot of connections.
Oh, so you come from tribe, man. You come from powerful people.
Yeah.
No. Praise the Lord.
Keep that quiet, though. So I called him and I said, Uncle, are we the children of Israel? So he said, he talks a very funny way. When you hear him, he's short, you know, but he's one of my favorite uncles. And he's like, Joseph, I will check for you. So I was waiting and nothing was happening. So I said, oh, Lord, what's going on? So I left it and I said, you know what, Lord, you know, I'm not really getting far with this. So I'm just going to leave this alone. But it's interesting. And then I did a degree. I did a degree in film. When I was doing my degree in film, I did it on how the martial arts made it into, my final paper was how the martial arts made it into Western film. So when I was doing the research, I had to do a whole bunch of research on racism, because early Western film, whenever they're portraying characters, they always have Europeans playing the characters. So as I was digging into racism and digging and starting to go into the history, it was like the Lord was saying, you need to go deeper. You need to go deeper. I'm like, why am I digging into racism? What is this all about? I was like, you haven't gone deep enough. You need to go deeper. So I kept going deeper and deeper. And then when I finished my paper, I left that alone for a while. And then this thing came up again about the whole thing with Israel, and I started to dig again. But this time there different resources had come up, different books, documentaries. And so I just started to listen. And as I started to listen, and also I watched what really triggered things off very heavily for me was, I think it's getting to about 2 years ago. I watched a video, and this guy's Ghanaian, and they're in Holland. And they had a meeting with people from Suriname.
All right.
And they were saying to the people from Suriname to come back to Ghana. The king of Ashanti was allocating land, and the people had questions about the Ashanti history. So this guy turns around and says, we the Ashanti, we are from the tribe of Judah, and we fled the Romans in AD 17. I was like, what? You did what? So I was listening and I said, wow, I've got to speak to this guy. I've got to talk to him. Yeah. So I start, finding out his name, searching for him on Facebook, trying to track him down. And eventually I found him and I spoke to him and we had a long conversation. And he was telling me that not only does the king of Ashanti know this, but he says there's dignitaries in this country that know this. Yeah. They know all about this at the top.
Joseph, guess what? We've run out of time. But listen, next week we're going to go further. But before we go, there are people watching this right now, and I feel like there are going to be people who's going to criticize and saying it's really weird that how some of our own people have a problem in even having a conversation like this. Yeah. And then there are the white people that are having a problem having a conversation like this, and always literally doing is searching for truth.
Yes.
Because the truth of the matter is something about our life doesn't make sense. There's a lot of
Yes.
things going on that doesn't make sense. And when you read the Bible, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I had Dr. Antipas. He's wrote a book called the White Man is Church or the White Man's Religion, etc. And one of the things that he was exploring, because a question came to him, is how the Bible is very black. It's very colorful. Let's use that word, because there are different shades of black. And when we hear Christianity, we think very much of a white Christianity. And it's amazing. I was having a conversation with someone and they were like, is that important? It's not important whether Jesus was black and we're going to talk about that next week, because you deal with that in Revelation. Is that important? And even black people carrying on the same way. And I feel like, and hear my heart, because I'm a person, I want to have a multicultural church, and I love white people. I love everyone, okay?
Yeah.
But I feel I must feel free as a human being to be able to check out who I am, my identity, the truth about who I am, and not feel guilty about it. And I feel that society tries to make us feel guilty about us talking about slavery, talking about the unjust things that's happened to us, to talk about, wait a minute, there are black Jews. There are black Jews. In fact, the original, or should I say, all right, let me say the original, the first were most likely people of color, as opposed to the European Jews. We're not saying there's not European Jews, but it seems like, and I love when I went to Israel, I had a conversation with a rabbi, and I thought, let me see what he's going to say to me. I was talking about, where black people, and he agreed. He actually agreed. They actually know.
Oh,
they know. But it's almost like we as black people, we don't want to have this conversation. And I think we're doing injustice to this next generation who are running up and down, trying to eat Chinese food, trying to eat pie mash and move into a culture. But at the same time, they still have been rejected and they can't even find out who they are.
Yeah.
I need, so just what I want to ask you, and then I want you to pray. What can you say in a couple of seconds to people out there about that? Because I think there are people right now who is feeling very uncomfortable about this conversation. And people is probably even, I'm going to go as far as saying, probably even wondering if they should still continue to be at Rack City Church because of what I'm saying. And it's amazing when you start saying certain things, certain people have certain things come up in their spirit. What would you say?
I would say it's not fair, black people. It's not fair that we don't like to research things, but we parrot everything that a certain set of people have taught us. There's a saying that, the victors of war, they write their history. I'm just paraphrasing.
Yes.
And so they can twist and steer history wherever they want to steer it. But if there are books and there are facts out there that prove otherwise what they're saying, you need to look at those facts and not just be tunnel vision, heading towards slaughter. It doesn't make any sense. So, Paul said he liked the people that were in Berea. He said they were more noble than, I've forgotten the other people. I think it was Thessalonica or wherever. He said because they searched the scriptures.
Yes.
If what he was saying was true.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things we don't go and check things. We if there's an organ behind it, and we can get emotional, then we accept it. But we don't like to search for truth. And this is an hour of truth, and God is revealing mysteries, and he's revealing truth at the moment. He is supposed to be the spirit of truth.
It's true. It's amazing. At the beginning of the year, in fact, from last year, I was struggling because we like to declare the word of the Lord for the year. And I was struggling. I was saying, God, what is the word that I should speak over Rack City Church for 2020? And I was struggling, trying to find out, what was the word of the Lord. And it was like a couple of days before I'm going to announce everything, the Lord said to me, divine clarity.
Wow.
And if there's not a word I got from the Lord, is that one? Because this year has been nothing but divine clarity. Things I kept saying to the church, I goes, things that we were confused about, we won't be confused about. Things that's done in the dark will come to light. And the word that I was using when I looked at that word, it was to the word transparency. And I think God is really now making things become so clear and transparent. And I think that people really, really need to recognize that all that's been happening over the last couple of months, all of this exposure, and we're going to talk more about that next week, is all what God is doing. Anyway, listen, I want you to pray. This is what I want you to pray for. There's young guys out there, young ladies out there who are literally searching, hence the reason why, and we're going to talk about that later on next week. They're searching to be a part of Nation of Islam, all of these different groups and what have you. And sadly, because the church, we have not spoken about these things. And if we did, we were being very careful about it. But these young people are now searching. Can you pray for this generation now that's searching, that when truth comes, it will not be mixed with anger and resentment? Because I'm telling you, when I started to go to the Ghana museum and went through the whole situation, I had someone with me who I was trying to minister to, and I thank God that happened because it became a little bit of a distraction. But when I came back and was processing all that I had experienced, as I said, I didn't even want to go back to Portugal anymore. Lovely place I go, but I was so angry. I said, they're not getting none of my money anymore. Wow. And I got to be honest, as a human being, I've had to now manage my emotions, manage the way, and I've had to ask the Spirit of the Lord, because you can't overcome evil with evil. You got to overcome it with good. So can you pray into that? Yeah. Hallelujah.
So, Father, we just thank you today.
Yes.
Your word says children are a heritage from the Lord.
Yes.
Lord, we thank you for these children, my God, that are out there. Some of them are lost.
Jesus.
And they don't know what to do. They're not just lost in terms of lost because of their salvation, but they're also lost because of identity.
Yes.
And Lord, many of these are angry, but your word says anger rests in the bosom of fools.
Jesus.
So we're asking you today, dear God, because we understand that their anger is justified. However, they need to know the truth, and the truth will set them free.
Yeah.
And Father, we just pray that wherever they're hurting, you will pour in your oil and your wine, that as they hear the truth, not truth that is loaded, that's poisonous and dangerous, but truth that points them to the place where they're able to forgive.
Yes, God.
That power only comes through you. That power only comes through the gospel.
Yes.
We understand that this truth is not being revealed so that we can hate another set of people, but it's being revealed so that we can come to the knowledge of who we are. And once we know who we are and we love ourselves, then we will see fit to love others better than we love them now. We just give you thanks right now for what your Spirit is doing in those that are watching this and sharing with their children so they can be free. We bless you. We give you all the glory and the praise. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, in the name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. Pastor Joseph Appearman, thank you very much. This was an incredible conversation. Listen, all of you that are watching, please, I need you to share this. And we're going to be back next week. We haven't even gone into the conversation yet. This is called introduction, and I'm telling you, and I want you to go out your way to make sure that we have record people listening to this. Listen, if you don't know where you come from, it's hard for you to know where you're going. So let's get the information we need and make sure you're getting it from the right people. We are giving it from a clean spirit. And once you understand that, we can jointly come together and make a difference I just want to thank you again for just all what you've said, Pastor Joseph. And let me just say to all of you watching us by YouTube, remember, subscribe. Those of you on Facebook, follow. And guess what? Start having the watch pie. See you next time, the same place, same time. Don't miss it. Part 2. God bless you.